Welcome back, all. So, we're just gonna go ahead and continue. Anyway, if we go back to the site, let me just refresh it. I've modified the code somewhat, and now if you type in the title and click on create, and again, you get an error message, but this remains as it is. The field is not reset. So the idea here, what we are trying to achieve, is to basically not reset the fields in case there is an error. Because, for example, if you have 10 fields which you need to populate, which a user needs to populate, let's say a username, an email address, a password, CAPTCHA, date of birth, secret question, whatever. Just imagine if he made a mistake somewhere with CAPTCHA, for example, and all the fields got reset. So he has to do it over and over and over and over again, and that's really bad because he has to retype like 10, 20 fields for no particular reason. So when you get an error message, if the input failed, don't let's create some logic where the fields will not be reset. So the error message will tell you what the problem is, and you can go down and fix only that segment and not rewrite the entire thing again. Okay, so in order for us to achieve this, we will switch the resetting of the fields to the parent component and make it dependent on the error. So if we get an error, the fields won't be reset. If we don't get an error, the fields will be reset. So the first thing that we need to do is go into the account form component.html and add this here. So hash form. This is a reference to the form. So this form is basically a local variable that is a reference to this form. That is how we're referencing in it, and that's how we're accessing it and everything that's in it. Okay, so next up is the account form component.ts. We just need to go into it. And there are a few things here which we've included. So viewChild and element ref. ViewChild is a directive that we use to basically fetch child components and HTML elements within our component. So element ref here, well, that's basically a type which refers to the HTML elements. We'll see what that does a little bit later and how it behaves. Basically, we just need to have it there. I know, it's a stupid explanation, but let me just show you down below what I mean by it. Anyway, so we will need to delete this part here. Let me just go back a few steps. Yep, so you had something like this, and this was used in order to reset the fields. But now we're going to go ahead and delete that, and that will be gone. So they're no longer reset by default upon the attempt of creating a new account. Rather, instead, we're going to go ahead and create a public reset form. Before I get into the public method reset form, let me just go ahead and explain this viewChild. So this viewChild, it says here form, and this is referring to this here, the reference to this form here. And then it says here form and element ref. Well, this just needs to have element ref. We need to tell it what type it is, and it's not we don't know, but we can just place element ref there and be safe and not think about it at all. So form needs to have a type here. Anyway, viewChild is a decorator, the same as before, the same as input and output. ViewChild is just another decorator in the long line of them. Now down below it says public reset form, and says this dot form dot native element dot reset. Now reset is a built-in method for resetting the form fields. This dot form is referring to the form up here, and native element is, well, Angular 2 doesn't allow direct editing of elements, so to say. So we need to tell it like native element and then reset it. This is a security precaution in place, but it's fine to use it now. It's not recommended, but in our case, we can use it here. Some other places, perhaps it wouldn't be a recommendation, but in our case, it's completely fine. Anyway, Next up that we're going to do is go into the app component.ts. So let me just find it, app component.ts. Oh my, come on. There we go. So app component.ts. Once again, we've imported a view child here. And if we scroll down, you will see that we have at view child here as well. But this part is a little bit different. Account form is our component, and it is the class that we have imported. So you have account form that we have imported, and you have its exact location as well. And then it says form again, doing pretty much the same thing. And then it says account form of type account form, and you again have the type, you have it imported here, account form. There is another line here, another line of code which is actually in charge of resetting all of this. So you have a public reset form method here in the account form component.ts, but it is not called from the child component. Rather, instead, it is called from the parent component. The parent component is calling this form, and we have made it public deliberately so that it can be called. So this part of the code is the same as before, which has been explained in the previous tutorial. And this here, it says basically this.form.reset form. It calls the method from the child component. So if we succeed in adding a new account, then we would like to reset the form. This.form, here, let me show you. This.form, this is the child component, and the method reset form basically belongs to the child component, but it is called from the parent component here, which means that the parent component dictates when the fields of the form will actually be reset. And this is the right way to do it, because the parent component knows whether we have actually succeeded or not. And if we have succeeded, okay, reset the fields. If we have not succeeded, well, don't reset the fields. Simple as that. Go into the else part and display the error message onto the screen. Anyway, that would be it here. I hope to see you in the follow-up.